AI sooner rather than later is going to change the world. It's going to change the practice of medicine. I think if I'm really looking down the future, what is going to happen, these things I'm talking about with needing APPs and needing physicians, I don't know where we stand. I think that, there's always that humanistic value in the art of medicine, which I don't think could be replaced. But for diagnostic purposes, for so forth, you have a patient coming in and gives their symptoms and get lab. You could have AI interpret it.
Dr. Michael Dragutsky, chairman of 1GI. I'm so excited to have you on the Scope Forward show. You're officially the first guest on season 5 of the Scope Forward show. So I'm very, very thrilled to have this conversation again with you.
Pleasure to be here, Praveen. Thank you for the invitation.
So it's been a few years since we have had this conversation. So I want to go back from that point of time. We talked about private equity. This was around the time when Scope Forward, my book, was getting published. Soon after, 1GI was formed. So how has the story transpired in the last few years? What is the update from a private equity standpoint, and not just for you, but from across the industry? What can you share?
Yes, so we've been in our private equity platform now for 5 years. And a lot has happened with 1GI and other private equity platforms in that time. And a lot of things happened in healthcare overall. From my opinion, I think that private equity still is a good thing and really a necessary thing for the doctors. There are so many pressures from the insurance companies, from the hospital systems, from the government, especially on states in the East and West Coast, that really mandate a numeric scale from physicians to band together to have some clout and leverage in the space. And even though that is not really a tangible thing to many of my partners and many doctors, that is very important. And there's a lot of behind the scenes work is happening to really combat these issues that are really against consolidation for physicians and providers. There's a lot of pros and cons to private equity. I think there have been some changes, but I think the changes, for the most part, have been behind the scenes. I believe if you ask physicians about their daily practice, they still see the patients on their schedule, their call schedule, their vacation schedule. The hospital coverage really is usually left to the local practices, mandated or controlled by the MSO. So I really think for our daily lives, really not much has changed in our schedule. The changes that have happened, unfortunately, that have not appealed to physicians and caused a lot of angst among providers are not driven by private equity, but have been driven by external factors. There's a lot of the hassle factors that physicians have been complaining about for years, with having to deal with insurance companies to get prior authorization to deal with MIPS, all these things that really interfere with us doing what we want to do, practice with medicine, would have happened and are happening despite consolidation. They would have happened anyway. I really think that private equity overall is a good thing. I'm a staunch believer in it. I think, again, we need to have the consolidation to be able to continue to have a seat at the table when we're dealing with these larger entities that right now yield most of the power.
How do you think the game is going to play out at an industry scale in the coming years? Let's say 5, 10 years from a private equity standpoint. Is this going to continue? Are we going to see second bite, third bite, and multiple bites in the? We've seen several in GI already. How long is this game going to play out? Any insight in that?
I think that there will be some second and third bites, but I don't think it's going to be as many as we had thought at the beginning. I think you're starting to see some larger transactions that are more, terminal transactions, but are very stable transactions. Two transactions that have concluded and are ongoing. For instance, was the GI Alliance deal with Cardinal, and that's more of a terminal transaction, but you have physicians aligned with a Fortune 15 company that has a lot of industry. So I really think it was a great thing, Dr. Weber and his group, to do that. Then you have another platform that is undergoing negotiation with Optum. So that may be a long-term transaction. Again, it gives stability. But I think even so, it really fulfills the need for numeric scale, giving cloud leverage in the industry.
So where is the end game here? Like, so are we going to see large integrated health systems? You brought up Optum, which is part of United Health Group. They have insurance on one side, providers on the other side. It's almost like, a large integrated health system unto itself. Like if you were to throw a stone, where would it land?
I think most physicians are going to have to be integrated. I think the days small groups are limited. There are still a lot of small groups, and they're doing well right now. But I really think as consolidation among payers, among systems continues to grow and they yield more power, the pressure is going to be too strong for small groups to remain unaffiliated. So I really think that the end game, if you're asking that, is to be in a large system where at least you could practice the way you want and you have somebody looking out for your best interest. And so you don't have unilateral pressure put on you that you have no stance against.
I've always have been put in this difficult position of asking this question, but I will ask it anyways, which is it is one thing for physicians who are leading this endeavor. The view from somebody like you who is leading this endeavor is very upbeat. But let's say, the groups who joined at the end, or like, somebody who does not have that much of a voice and within a large system who joined the MSO towards the end. And I'm not asking with respect to just your MSO, but I'm asking in general with private equity, because there have been at least some unhappy voices, within the industry. So where is that stemming from? How does the story play out? People at different ends of this spectrum.
I can see it from both ways because even though I'm involved in the administration of our platform, I practice medicine full time. I'm in the trenches much more actually than I am in the administrative work. So I'm dealing with my partners and colleagues every day in our office and in our ASCs. I hear it from both sides of the story. Change is always a uncomfortable thing for a lot of people in general. And definitely there is a change when you join a MSO. There's the perception that lose control over your existence. And I really don't think that that's fair. I think in the day-to-day routine for physicians, there is not much change if you really analyze it. There's been some financial issues because especially when a platform is starting, that there's infrastructure costs that are paid from the physician. And in the last few years, I really think a lot of the unhappiness financially when physicians joined an MSO was the confluence of not only the infrastructure costs, but we got hit with a lot of things that happened with COVID at the same time over the last few years. There was a big labor correction that happened a few years ago when a lot of physician practices had to increase, probably justifiably so, to keep our MAs and our techs and our nurses with us when McDonald's and so forth were offering big bonuses. That labor correction would have happened whether you were affiliated with an MSO or not, for your practice. But that hit the same time. Plus, expenses went up during COVID. All our products, even gloves and gowns, became incrementally higher costs, and those have not come down at all post COVID. So you had these increasing expenses that happened at the same time as the physicians were helping fund the infrastructure buildup of their MSOs. So I think that exacerbated the financial issues. But a lot of groups now, what they call income repair, are seeing that, and a lot of that's due to better payer contracts, economies of scale that would have only happened with a large organization and cannot and does not happen with a small group that's unaffiliated.
Mike, we've been talking about systemic issues on and off, and we've talked about GIs dropping out of gastroenterology. We've talked about burnout. As you see them, what are the systemic issues in gastroenterology right now?
Yes, there's a lot of systemic issues in gastroenterology, as there is in the entire medical field.
Mm.
Focusing on gastroenterology, a few things. First of all, we're not training enough gastroenterologists, and the current estimate is there is at least a shortage of 2,000 gastroenterologists in the United States. And if you have approximately 15,000 gastroenterologists, uh, across the U.S. That's a high percentage. So really, there's not enough healthcare providers in the GI field to take care of our patients. In addition, specific to gastroenterology, there's not enough endoscopists to take care of the endoscopic needs, especially with the aging population, especially with dropping the age of colon screening to 45, which increased significantly the amount of patients that need to be screened. There's just not enough gastroenterologists to go around. We've had to change the model, which we did successfully in my practice in Memphis, by really focusing on hiring and training well APPs, nurse practitioners and PAs, to really fulfill the needs in the office to see patients, get them on the right track. And it's forced physicians or forced gastroenterologists to actually have to spend more time doing endoscopic procedures. I think that's the need. I think that may contribute to the burnout a little bit, just doing endoscopic procedures and not getting a lot of satisfaction from taking care of patients in the office. Although a lot of gastroenterologists really like doing endoscopic procedures more so than maybe being office practice. But that's basically caused some of the burnout. And again, as we mentioned before, just medicine with the increasing hassle factors with dealing with insurers, dealing with systems has really caused increasing depression and burnout. Again, not only in gastroenterology, but in the whole medical community.
You mentioned before we started that you completed reading my new book, The Shift. What did you think, and did you resonate with it?
100,000%. We had been talking before I read the book on there's a Medscape surveys where 49% of physicians, are facing burnout and depression, and we had talked about the need for ancillary providers, APPs, and so forth. And we had talked about, what's going to happen in the future with AI and new technologies, liquid biopsies, and so forth. And it's sort of reading a, a transcription of our conversation when I was reading Shift. So it was right on target.
I'm very glad to know. So, Mike, let's dig deeper with some of these exponential technologies, especially AI. What I'd love to do is reflect with you on how this would play out, from your standpoint, from your lens, over the next 3, 5 years, 10 years, and longer. I have my own views, as you've already read, but I have some evolving views as well. I'd love to reflect first on how do you think AI is going to play out? We're going to see a magnification of what we are seeing now. How do you see it play out?
Let me mention that, a lot of us don't, AI is sort of out there and what is it? Recently had to write a letter, like a thank you note and some of the letters, and went to Chat GPT and asked it to write a thank you note for a specific circumstance. And it was magnificent. I mean, in just, in a matter of seconds, it spit out. There's also technology that you could go and ask them to do a PowerPoint, new updates in inflammatory bowel disease. And in less than a minute, you have a slide deck with all the nuances. It's really amazing. If you haven't even dabbled in that, it's worth a few minutes of everybody's time just to see, really what's out there. AI sooner rather than later is going to change the world. It's going to change the practice of medicine. I think if I'm literally looking down the future, what is going to happen, these things I'm talking about with needing APPs and needing physicians, I don't know where we stand. I think that, there's always that humanistic value in the art of medicine, which I don't think could be replaced. But for diagnostic purposes, for so forth, you have a patient coming in and gives their symptoms and get lab. You could have AI interpret it and lead to differential diagnosis, suggest lab tests. Probably could
Like
be
a
as accurate or
prescription,
more accurate than people.
yeah.
So I don't know where Arrow is. I guess we only have scopes, although there's going to be robotic scopes down in the future. So it's a great question, and you extrapolate that to society. The technology with Moore's law is here, and it's exponentially increasing faster than any of us realize. I wonder what the role of civilization is going to be down the road.
Before we go down that path, I want to come back to GI. When you talk about AI in GI, everybody assumes it's about polyp detection, but I want to start there. Are you using AI routinely in endoscopy?
Yes, we are.
How's that experience been?
I think it still needs some evolution. It helps us find small polyps as good or better than we could detect, although there's conflicting data on the utilization of that. Specifically with polyps, we find small polyps perhaps better with AI. I don't know if that really leads to significant decrease in colon cancer. I don't think we miss larger polyps. So I think that's going to improve. The next version is going to tell us what type of polyps there are and what we have to remove. And I think that will be beneficial. Right now, it just X a polyp. But again, it's getting a lot of data collections. It's improving. They have new models in Europe that are more advanced than us because our system and our FDA, I think, is a little slower to approve some of these technologies. It'll be here before we know it.
Let's do a thought experiment. So what kind of technology, and I'm not just talking about AI, but it could be digital biology in the form of, let's say, liquid biopsy, it could be robotics, it could be some total of all these exponential technologies converging and acting and multiplying together. What do you think has to happen or could happen that would displace the endoscopist? Because when I talk to the AI folks, they're never going to speak this language because they're always going to say, hey, it assists the physician, and it's just not medicine, but any industry. Everyone talks about the person who uses AI will, displace the person who is not using AI. But I want to go beyond that because I'm seeing something else happen. It's a wave, it's a huge force, probably going to engulf every industry, every part of the world, more than that we can imagine. But I want to do this thought experiment. What do you think needs to happen for gastroenterology to, once again, irreversibly shift to the digital age?
I'm going to probably go too much of a tangent and too much into the future, but for the present, most gastroenterologists, and I definitely have a bias for colonoscopy and against liquid biopsy and against DNA testing for the natural conclusion that, let's say, everybody in the United States had a colonoscopy. Even though it's not 100% accurate, it's close. And we take out polyps on everybody that we find, and we could eradicate, for the most part. There are exceptions, there are genetic mutations and so forth, but most people, colon cancer comes from, polyps. So you eradicate polyps, you prevent colon cancer. So those people have their colonoscopies and have colon cancer. Regardless, it's more invasive test and some these other things we'll talk about, liquid biopsy and Cologuard, but you can really significantly eradicate colon cancer. And the studies have shown that colonoscopies do, in fact, decrease the incidence of colon cancer. On the other hand, let's say everybody in the United States did Cologuard or did a liquid biopsy, okay? And that can find advanced polyps, but a lot of times they'll find cancer. Okay, so extrapolated that everybody gets that. Nobody has colonoscopies. Everybody does Cologuard. Everybody does liquid biopsies. Then you'll catch cancer early. but you won't eradicate it. You'll catch it early, and but then people have cancer, and then you can treat it. And colon cancer, fortunately, can be treated very well, more than most of the other cancers we see in GI. But you have everybody colon cancer. I don't like that scenario. I'd rather prevent things than react and find it early and treat it. Colon cancer is one of the few preventable cancers, and I think we're giving up something when we're going to some of these newer technologies. As those technologies are better, they'll hopefully be able to find polyps more so when they're not cancer, and that technology will get better. So it may be that they'll find people with polyps that need to have colonoscopies, but right now as it stands, it's not there yet. I really think that the future is going to be genetic tests. Again, we'll have customized, personalized preventative care that you will genetically be able to say you're susceptible to heart disease, or this person is susceptible to breast cancer, or this person is susceptible to colon cancer, or this person to diabetes, or whatever. And then using their genome and genetics, you will be able to tailor those people for their individualized preventive care. If they're prone genetically to heart disease, then you concentrate on that. If they're prone to colon cancer, then you have to do colonoscopies. So I think there'll be a paradigm shift of preventive care in the future. Again, the way things are going, that may be here, closer than being further away. But I really think that's what's going to happen down the road.
How about the microbiome?
Microbiome is so fascinating. I really think that the microbiome of the gut really controls the rest of the body. We always knew that the GI tract was the most important thing in the human body, and now we're getting proof. So I think we're at the beginning stages of really understanding the microbiome and what the different bacteria, what the different compositions of the microbiome leads. But I think that a spectrum of diseases, the brain gut axis is real. I think autoimmune diseases in particular are gut related. And when we find out more about how this happens with translocation of larger molecules through the gut, through leaky gut, and then the reaction of the body with these large molecules, perhaps causing other autoimmune conditions, I think we're going to be able to eradicate a lot of diseases that never historically were associated with issues in the gut. I agree with you. Microbiome is going to be of the utmost importance. Again, we're on it just the beginning of that, but I think time goes on, it's going to play a large role, and it's probably going to play a role in these diseases like irritable bowel syndrome. Really, really, still we're learning a lot more, but don't know the nuances. And I think it's not only going to help eradicate serious diseases, but other diseases which are serious to the person who has it, not life threatening, but still for somebody's health and well being, we're going to be able to eradicate those conditions as well.
And as you know, colonoscopy robots, they're in the works. What would happen if we arrive at a point where, there's a robot coupled with AI? Again, as with exponentials, everything gets better and better with more data, more sophisticated. So it arrives at a point of accuracy. And like you said, precision medicine powered by genomics. So you have all of this converging, and we reach that point of time in the future. What would the role of the gastroenterologist be? Would the GI be a GI operator, like, press a button and it does it, and then you watch it, and then like some pilots, right? Like, so you need the
Right.
pilot, the
Yeah.
AI is running the plane.
Yeah, maybe it's good that there'll be a shortage of gastroenterologists. We may not need as many as we do now, but you're probably right. We'll be the supervisor. Robots will be the supervisor for APPs and for APPs and nurse practitioners and PAs. Maybe it is a more supervisory role. Maybe it'll get us back into, if we do not need it as far as the technology part of it, maybe it'll get us back more to the art of medicine, the hand holding, the humanistic side, because we don't want to lose if somebody has a bad diagnosis. Yes, the robot found your colon cancer. That's great, but we still need somebody to be with that patient, to offer our advice, to hold the hand, to offer comfort. And I don't see how that can be done robotically.
Let's talk about this. It's going to be fun. You mentioned ChatGPT writing the thank you note for you, doing some of those tasks. I know people who are talking to AI as though it were a counselor and it's advising you, guiding you, life advice, like very deep personal advice. Because unlike humans, it doesn't judge you. It doesn't think of you as good or bad. It's not as divisive as we are cultures, like in whichever part of the world. Like it's not thinking, oh, this person is from here, this person is from there. It doesn't have these biases, and so it's able to listen to whoever's talking wholly based on whatever it knows. It is able to guide and say, and it's like a PhD, right? Like in not just one field but multiple fields. So you have these group of PhD experts consulting with each other and giving you guidance, and it could be life advice too. So what if, like you're saying, the physician could handhold. The real problem is also the money aspect of medicine too, right? Like managed care, and how we have, where we have arrived today, for good or for worse, we are here. Physicians want to be compensated based on time and all of that. Nobody, no insurer as of today will pay you for holding the hand of a. It doesn't matter whether you hold, whether you don't. From that standpoint, maybe even an AI or an empathetic robot that probably looks human. I've seen some, that's able to interact with a patient like that.
The first thing I was to say, you want to smile, facial gestures, and a hug, and with a bad diagnosis, and just looking somebody in the eye and say, and steering in the right direction. But you're right. I mean, there are empathic robots that have facial expressions and so forth. Boy, that it's interesting. I would hope that there is still a role for a human, that we communicate better with each other with empathy than having a robotic counselor or a robotic life coach. But again, costs are involved and so forth. And the generations now are raised, with kids at 3 years old, and have their iPads and their smartphones and are playing video games and are interacting. They're raised in technology. They're raised with virtual reality. They're raised with all this. So, we were brought up without this. So maybe the future generations who are raised in a technology environment may not see any difference in a robotic, empathetic robotic than a human being.
And this is exactly the reflection, as that I wanted to have with you. So what would happen to the physician, the gastroenterologist in particular, who is so busy today? Step out of the endoscopy room, is busy with screening colonoscopies, busy with doing procedures, and all for good reason, right? Like, with the patient in the consulting room, in the hospital, and at home, and finishing the EHR, just very busy, does not take out time to understand what's going on and how this is likely to play out, has no clue. And then you wake up one day and the world has changed and shifted with or without you. I look at the GI space like a third person sometimes. I look at it from the outside. And there are a lot of startups in the microbiome space. We don't know whether they're good or not, but it's happening without guidance from a gastroenterologist. Looks to me that the GI clinicians are missing that window of opportunity. It's that train is moving without, they should be leading it, but they're not there at the helm. Why? Because they're just busy, very, very busy with what's going on.
Physicians have always not been involved because we're so busy with taking care of patients, and it's been the systems and advanced things without our participation, and that's why physicians right now are sort of, in the both in the economic and lifestyle, right now at the bottom rung of the ladder, because our mission, our goal in life, our soul's mission was, to be healers, to take care of patients, and that's what we've done. And we've not engaged, whether it's, basically not time, or again, we love taking care of patients and that's our enjoyment, and that's how we get self-satisfaction. That's our mission in our life, to, raise the human health, raise the human spirit, even on a one-on-one level. And that's what we do. We're not into this. And yeah, The drawback is we haven't participated. I'm hoping when I read the chapter about what you're talking about, that the physicians aren't participating in this. I was thinking that perhaps now that we're consolidated and have, you know, private equity backing and with larger companies, that we will have the resources to be involved on the forefront of all these things that you're talking about, whether it's microbiome or AI integrating into gastroenterology from a procedure level, but also from a EHR level, a day-to-day level to make our lives easier. I would hope that may give us the resources to do that for those who want to participate and be on that forefront. Right now, physicians, we're too busy and we don't have the financial resources. We don't go and raise. A few of us do. We have leaders that have really been entrepreneurs and great people that see the vision like you do, but not enough. So hopefully, having resources will help us participate in this as opposed to things happening and handed down to physicians.
Because it's not just about time, but it's also about mental capacity, burnout, depression, all those issues that we don't like to talk about openly. What needs to happen in order to create even the mind space in order for somebody to be enthusiastic and energetic about embracing the future, going in this direction? Because if they don't, we know, what's going to happen. But for them to do that, they not only need to create time, but they also need to feel up for it from inside.
No, I agree. And that's a good question. A lot of us don't have time, but as they say, if you want something done, you give it to the busiest person and it'll get done. Busy people make the time to do things. Let's say I'd love to do that. And I try to do as much, read about it and participate with you and give my thoughts if they have any, if they're reasonable. But, you have a large practice and taking care of patients day in and day out. So much time you can allocate to other things and financial resources. Unless you stop medicine and go and do this full time, which some of our colleagues have done very successfully. And that's a change shift that only a few of us really endeavor to take. We have to have hopefully a financial structure with consolidation that we could support our colleagues. And it's easy to support a few colleagues when you're in a group of 1,000 doctors and you could share resources than it is in a small group of 5 or 10 doctors. It's almost impossible to stay practicing medicine and have the resources to be on the forefront of these advances that we need to do. I agree with you 100%. We need to be involved. This is our profession. We're the ones who have the confidence and the interaction with patients. We're the providers. So it needs to happen. But
Mike, you and I have had over the years several conversations on deeper aspects of life. We usually don't talk about all of that beyond a one on one. But given where AI is going, given where the world is shifting, one of my inspirations of to get going again with the Scope Forward show, this is my fifth year, to start interviewing again and do this is because I sense a dramatic shift, especially led by AI and everything else that's happening in the world outside. But unless somebody is able to go within themselves, in whatever form of individual practice that they have, and I'm not talking practice of medicine, but I'm talking practice of going within, it's going to be hard to sustain the rapidity of changes which are happening and which are going to only magnify. I want to talk a little bit more freely and openly about that with you. So, my leading question to you here is, do you remember the phone numbers of everybody in your family?
yes,
All of them.
not all of them, because some of them I've lost. Maybe I'm getting older, but it's yeah. Well, it depends. If you consider one on the speed dial the number, yes, I know all their phone numbers.
Oh no, that that doesn't count. One more question. Like, so when was the last time you went to a new place without the aid of a map, like a map app, like Google Maps or Apple Maps or one of those?
Went to a new place. Oh, it's been a while because I do a lot of traveling throughout the world, and usually I map things ahead of time to know where I'm going to go when I'm there, and often when I'm there. Yeah, it's part of us now. It's an extension of us, Google Maps.
As you can imagine, where I'm going with this, we're probably going to very, very soon arrive you know, at a time where it'll be hard for us to function not just with technology, but without AI. AI is going to be such an integral part of functioning, just like electricity and everything else, or even more. It's going to take over. And I heard once in a conference, someone say that with motor cars and machines, they extended our motor capabilities, and AI is going to do that for our minds. When I heard that, I heard also, even though he didn't say it, this person didn't say it, I heard something reverse in my head, which was, like motor cars and machines took away some of our abilities of the physical body. AI is probably also going to take away some of our mental abilities. Like for numbers, we don't remember, like, so we can't function without maps. We used to be able to navigate without maps, but we don't have that spatial capability anymore. Now, children born in the current generation probably they will not even know what the world was without AI. It somewhere is affecting or is going to affect the collective consciousness. And if I contextualize this for gastroenterology, so the future gastroenterologist may not know how to operate an endoscope without a robot and an AI.
Right,
Entirely possible.
right. Yes, of course
It's,
it is.
it's,
Yeah, but younger generation can't do math problems without a calculator.
there you
You
go.
don't need to. You don't. They don't. You don't need to learn math tables. You know that at all. So you're right. It's affecting our mind. The thought that just popped in my head when you were saying that was even a little more existential thought about control taking over our mind. Is that you have to make sure this AI. Who the person who designed this AI, because then AI hopefully won't determine for us our likes and dislikes of things, and on a deeper subconscious level. That's the scary thing with artificial intelligence, supplanting our own original thoughts.
Probably is already happening, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's causing a divide.
Let's bring the context back to GI and gastroenterology or healthcare even. Any reflections or on how this might play out, because probably that day will come. It's going to shrink the collective consciousness of gastroenterologists. It's going to shrink for all industries, but even for this industry, for healthcare. So you're going to lose the mental abilities. Plus, you don't have time to invest your time right now. Like, so you're going to shrink and shrink. And then what's going to happen?
For gastroenterology and medicine, yeah, it will be supplanted by AI. That and is it determining diagnosis and so forth, and maybe taking part of the empathy and the hand holding, as you alluded to before. There's a lot of industries, medicine, and so forth, that AI is gonna be obsolete, or not maybe totally obsolete, but there won't need to be as many of us. And yeah, our role may diminish this. We're going to be supervising, as you said before, robotic and supervising healthcare, and there won't be that role. I guess it's our job to prepare people, and maybe the only way you could do that is by, as you said, getting more involved in the process, so we see and could prepare our profession for these upcoming changes, instead of, as I said, one day somebody waking up and say, oh wow, I don't need to go to work today because my patients are going online and interacting with the Dr. AI and getting their diagnosis and their prescriptions sent into the pharmacy, where the robot will, package there. Then it'll be drone lifted to your house, and you're fine. So it's like sci-fi that's almost upon us, and maybe not in a good way, but maybe it'll free the human spirit to to do other things, and I'm hoping that's the case. And you alluded before some of our previous conversations. I've done a lot of travel, as I said. I guess it stemmed from my parents in their beat up car in New York. They used to like to travel, and there's a lot of things in the Northeast you could see in a short distance, and they put in me the travel bug that I grew up with. So I do a lot of international traveling, and I've been to a lot of places and a lot of spiritual places around the world, in India and Rishikesh and throughout Asia and in all seven continents, and seen that human beings have this commonality of spirituality, and our goal in life is to elevate the human and spirit. And I think that's a paradigm importance that we do as healers, and we're going to really have to step up that in high gear with all these factors coming in that may diminish our role as people in our occupations and our livelihoods and our daily interactions with our fellow human beings.
Very broadly, what are your practices? Like, how do you do, and why is that important for you? Or has that played a role in your ability as a healer, as a doctor?
Yes, I think that because I've several things that I've kind of seen in other cultures and other belief systems throughout the world. One of the main things that a lot of people believe, more so in Eastern cultures and Western cultures, is like reincarnation, and that we're here for this life, and there are other lives down the road. I'm type A, so when I come across a concept like that, I really delve into it a lot, and I've done that. My wife and I have done that. We meditate. We go to seminars and podcasts and so forth on spirituality, and I've really been able to help that with my patients from all spectrums, with bad diseases, people who are dying, who have lost a loved one, and sort of share my experiences and my travels, that we're here, and but there will it's not the end of our journey. It's just our life is just a part of our soul's journey. People, I think, are becoming more receptive to that. So that's kind of helped me more with my empathetic part of my practice.
Does that in some way somehow safeguard you from burnout yourself, and going down an emotionally turbulent path, given
Yeah.
everything that happens in medicine?
Oh, without a doubt. I think that the people I've met in the spiritual community, a little different perspective, what they do in their role and so forth. And I think that even meditating, and even just at a small level, keeping a healthy mind is a big factor in preventing burnout, disappointment. Our medical profession is in trouble with, again, a 49% of our colleagues in all medical specialties are depressed. In gastroenterology specifically, some polls feel that half the practicing gastroenterologists are going to retire in the next 2 decades because of burnout and disappointment, and that they don't feel they have control of their lives, especially when they're spending more time talking to the insurance companies and trying to get prior approval for medications and procedures than being able to just order something that they know is correct, and just have to go through this. It's just really, it's a dissatisfaction part of being a physician. And I think that self-introspection, meditation, so forth will at least somehow buffer these things, put things more in perspective. And I think it's healthy. As you said, the mind is going to be so much more important as AI is taking over our mind, that I agree with you that everything we can to strengthen mind and our spirituality in these coming times is going to be a benefit for not only gastroenterology, but for all society.
Many people such as you, would probably know this internally, and in certain circles that we participate in. But how come we don't talk more openly about it in medicine, in healthcare, when medicine itself is so close to the physical body, the human body, and you're dealing with life, death, disease all the time?
I think it's the difference between Eastern and Western medicine. Partially, I've been to Benton Hospital, so met with the doctors and the head administrators there. They have a totally different take on how they approach patients. I think with Western medicine, we have 15 minutes for a patient. And we have a full schedule, and then we have to do 20 scopes in a day, and the way it's set up for medical reimbursement, and doctors unfortunately don't get reimbursed for taking care of patients on a one-to-one level. It's procedure oriented, it's ancillary oriented, and just that's the way it's evolved. You don't have that time to sit with patients and do that. Maybe the APPs do have more time. Maybe we got to get them more focused on the spiritual part as well. They'll have the time, but I just think it's in our practice. We just don't have the time, and that training never encompassed that. Training is in Western medicine at traditional at our medical schools, not have any training, or maybe 1 2 hour lecture on a spiritual or alternative medicine, and we're just not trained in that. We don't practice it, and we don't have the time or the resources.
Curious to know, like, so would it be too much of a woo woo to talk about mindfulness in gastroenterology, in medicine, and especially when it connects to the gut brain axis we talked about? In some ways, it's connected, or even extend this idea further because of the degree of burnout and emotional turmoil that's going. People talk to me all the time, and they share things that they probably don't share even with their colleagues, or sometimes even with their own families and all that. Like, so when that degree of suffering is going on, and suffering is the right word, there is a degree of suffering, and we're at the threshold of this suffering, magnification of this suffering, thanks to the radical shifts in technology that are going to change medicine, healthcare, and everything. Would it be too far of a stretch to, let's say, imagine a future time where one or more of the GI societies even set up a mindfulness institute to train physicians, gastroenterologists on this path? Not only it helps them, but also it helps how they go about the healing process with patients and everything. And somehow we figure out a systemic way to figure out reimbursement and in the context of managed care, or come up with a newer model. Any thoughts, reflections?
Yeah, I hope they are working on things like that. If not, they should be doing that. I mean, it's so important. And, not everybody's going to be receptive to mindfulness training, but I think more people will be receptive than when we think of. We just haven't given them the opportunity, and we see a lot of, these stress induced diseases, and we know that gut brain axis is real. And, traditionally, we know there are other factors, let's say in irritable bowel syndrome, but traditionally it used to be called nervous stomach and so forth. But emotions definitely play a big role in our body on a real physiologic level. I think it's the utmost importance for us, especially nowadays, that we're seeing so many issues with increasing suicide rates in younger people. It's the world undergoing a fundamental change to that realm, and not for the better. So I think all these stressors are really important. And I think it's paramount for us as healers, again, to be on the forefront of this, and for those who are receptive, and whether the physicians who are receptive, the providers who are receptive, the patients who are receptive, to develop ways. And we probably have to integrate more spirituality and more Eastern medicine, in what we do here in the United States in our practice. So I agree with you 100%. We could get engaged in that. That would be a major part. Even with all these technological advances in AI, I still think, again, the human spirit is so important. That's why we do what we do. We do this to elevate the human spirit, and the mind is and mindfulness and is a major component of us being able to do that.
Yeah, quite amazing. Thank you for sharing all these thoughts, and freely and openly as well. I think it's very, very important. Bring this to the fore. Any final reflections, Mike, as we wrap up our conversation?
No, I think that your guidance in multiple directions with gastroenterology needs to also be embraced by our colleagues. And the work you do behind the scenes to help our profession, get a gratitude for that. So keep it up.
Thank you so much.